Don't you dare ask us to cancel our plans again. We've had these Elton John tickets for months," my mother yelled, her voice echoing through the sterile hospital room. I sat there stunned, clutching my phone with trembling hands. It was Christmas Eve at Las Vegas Medical Center. Just me, my 2-year-old twins, Ethan and Emily, quietly playing in the corner, and Valerie, a kind nurse, checking my vitals. The searing pain in my abdomen was unbearable, like someone was twisting a knife inside me, but the indifference on my mother's face through the video call hurt even worse. "My name is Natasha Wilson. I'm 33 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've been an afterthought in my own family. My younger sister Jessica, the golden child, could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. Meanwhile, I couldn't even convince them to watch their only grandchildren while I underwent emergency surgery for internal bleeding, complications stemming from the grief and stress after my husband's death 6 months ago. The doctors had warned that I needed immediate surgery. But all my parents cared about was making it to their concert and celebrating Christmas Eve with Jessica. When I finally asked for help after exhausting every other option, my dad's words cut deeper than any scalpel ever could. "You're becoming a real nuisance and a burden, Natasha. We're retired now. We deserve to enjoy our lives without your constant problems." I had been supporting my parents financially ever since they took early retirement 3 years ago, sending $2,500 every month to help with their mortgage and expenses. Even after James died, I kept sending the money out of love, duty, and a belief that family should stand by each other. How foolish I had been. As silent tears slid down my cheeks onto the hospital blanket, Valerie gently squeezed my shoulder. "My friend Olivia is a professional nanny," she offered softly. "She specializes in working with children who've gone through trauma. Let me call her for you." Her kindness was a sharp, beautiful contrast to my parents' coldness. The twins were too young to fully understand what was happening. They'd already lost their father, and now there was a real chance they could lose me too if the surgery went wrong. The thought was terrifying, but not as terrifying as leaving them with people who clearly saw them as burdens. In that moment, writhing in pain and drowning in disappointment, I made my decision. "Yes, please call her," I told Valerie. And with those few words, I began cutting the poisonous ties that had bound me to people who had never truly loved me. As I hung up the phone, a flood of memories rushed over me, being overlooked in favor of Jessica over and over again. When I graduated college with honors, my parents barely acknowledged it, too busy celebrating Jessica landing a role in a local commercial. When I married James, they complained the venue was too far. When Ethan and Emily were born, they visited once, muttering that the babies were too fussy. James had been my rock. He knew the ache of family disappointment all too well, having been estranged from his own father. "We'll build our own family," he would say. "One that knows how to love." And we did for a while. Our home was filled with laughter, warmth, acceptance. Until a drunk driver stole him away, leaving me to raise 2 toddlers while battling grief and depression alone. Despite everything, I kept sending my parents money, even increasing the monthly amount when they complained about inflation. I thought I was doing the right thing. The irony was gut-wrenching. Here I was, bleeding internally, possibly dying, and they couldn't even skip one concert to help. Valerie returned to tell me Olivia was on her way. "She's amazing with kids," she assured me. She used to work with trauma patients at the Children's Hospital before becoming a private nanny. "How much will this cost?" I asked, fear creeping into my voice. Medical bills were already stacking up, and James's insurance had too many gaps. "Don't worry about that right now," Valerie said gently. "Let's focus on getting you ready for surgery." But I was worried. Then a thought sparked inside me, a thought that turned into a flame. The $2,500 I was supposed to send to my parents next week. That money could help pay for Olivia. When Olivia arrived, she was everything Valerie had promised. Kind, professional, instantly connecting with Ethan and Emily. As the hospital staff prepped me for surgery, I made another decision. "Could you bring me my phone one more time?" asked Valerie. With shaking fingers, I sent 2 messages. The first, to my bank, canceling all future automatic transfers to my parents. The second, to my parents themselves. I will no longer be providing financial support. My children and I deserve better than being your afterthoughts. Do not contact me again. As they wheeled me toward the operating room, despite the fear and the pain, I felt something unexpected. Freedom. The surgery was a success, but left me weak and drained. I spent 5 days in the hospital, slipping in and out of consciousness. Through it all, Olivia stayed by my side, caring for Ethan and Emily like they were her own. During one lucid moment, I noticed my phone blinking with notifications, 27 missed calls and dozens of texts from my parents and Jessica. The messages followed a predictable pattern: confusion, anger, desperate pleas about their mortgage. Not once did they ask how my surgery had gone. Not once did they ask about the twins. The final message from my father was especially telling. You can't just cut us off like this. We've planned a cruise next month. The tickets are non-refundable. Jessica's messages were different. She seemed genuinely confused. Mom and Dad told me you were just having a minor procedure. What's going on? Why are they freaking out about money? And it hit me. My parents had lied to Jessica about the severity of my situation. Lied to protect their image, and to justify choosing a concert over their own daughter's life. Still groggy from the medication, I decided to tell Jessica the full truth. I sent her a message explaining everything, about the emergency surgery, about our parents' refusal to help. Her response came almost immediately. Oh my God, Natasha. I had no idea it was an emergency surgery. They told me you were just being dramatic about a routine checkup. I would have watched the twins if I'd known. I'm so sorry. I believed her. Jessica had never been cruel, just raised in a family where she had been taught that her needs always came first. Maybe now, with the truth laid bare, she could finally start seeing our parents for who they really were. By the time I was discharged from the hospital, I had made several life-changing decisions. First, I officially hired Olivia part-time to help with the twins during my recovery. Second, I contacted a lawyer to draft a will, designating a trusted friend, not my parents, as the twins' legal guardian in the event something happened to me. Third, I blocked my parents' phone numbers, leaving only Jessica on limited access while I assessed whether I could truly trust her. The financial impact of these choices wasn't small. That $2,500 a month I had been sending to my parents represented nearly a third of my income as a freelance graphic designer. But without that burden, I could finally afford proper child care, and maybe even begin rebuilding the emergency fund that had been wiped out after James's death. That night, back in my own bed with the twins sleeping peacefully across the hall, I felt a confusing mix of emotions. Guilt for daring to put myself and my children first. Fear about navigating recovery and motherhood alone. But also, a strange, unfamiliar feeling blooming quietly inside me. Self-respect. My phone pinged. Text from Jessica. I just had a huge fight with Mom and Dad about how they treated you. I'm staying at a hotel tonight. Can we talk tomorrow? Maybe, just maybe, I wasn't completely alone after all. 2 weeks after my surgery, I was slowly regaining my strength. The incision still throbbed when I moved too quickly, but I was managing. Olivia was a godsend, arriving each morning to help with the twins while I worked remotely. My graphic design clients had been incredibly understanding, and I felt grateful for the flexible work that kept me close to my kids. Jessica had visited twice, bringing homemade meals and spending time with Ethan and Emily. At first, our conversations were cautious, strained. But slowly, she began opening up about her own experiences with our parents. They always made it seem like you were the one choosing to stay away, she admitted one evening as we watched the twins play. I never realized they were the ones pushing you out. I was beginning to see a new side of my sister, one hidden for years beneath the weight of our parents' manipulation. I wasn't ready to fully trust her yet, but I appreciated her trying. Then came the knock I had half expected and fully dreaded. Through the peephole I saw them, my parents. My mother clutched her designer purse, looking nervous. My father stood stiffly, arms crossed, impatience written all over his face. I hesitated, my heart pounding, before opening the door just a crack. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. "Natasha, darling, we've been so worried," my mother said, her voice dripping with sugary insincerity. "You haven't been answering our calls. We needed to make sure you and the twins were all right." "We're fine," I said flatly. "If that's all." "It's not all," my father interrupted, leaning into the door. "We need to discuss this ridiculous financial situation. The bank called about our mortgage payment. We had to dip into our cruise savings to cover it." The audacity was breathtaking. No questions about my health. No concern for their grandchildren. Only demands for money. "I told you," I said coldly. "I'm cutting financial ties." "I meant it." "But sweetie," my mother whined, her voice rising, "we've come to depend on that money. Your father and I adjusted our lifestyle based on your commitment to help us." "My commitment?" I repeated in disbelief. "I sent money out of guilt, not obligation. And when I needed you the most, you chose Elton John over your daughter and grandchildren." My father's face darkened. "That's not fair, Natasha. We had plans. Plans more important than my life." Snap. "The doctors told me there was a chance I wouldn't survive the surgery. Did you even care enough to ask?" Their silence was my answer. "We made one mistake," my mother whispered dramatically. "Are you really going to punish us like this?" "This isn't punishment," I said, a strange calm settling over me. "It's consequence. I spent my whole life chasing your approval. And in my darkest moment, you abandoned me." "We're your parents," my father said, his voice hardening. "And I'm a parent too," I shot back. "And I would never treat Ethan and Emily the way you treated me." At that moment, Emily toddled into view, clutching her stuffed giraffe. My mother's demeanor changed instantly. "There's my precious grandbaby," she cooed, bending down with outstretched arms. "Grandma brought presents." Emily, unfamiliar with them, shrank back and clung to my leg, her little face wary. "I think you should leave," I said quietly. "When I'm ready to talk, if I'm ever ready, I'll reach out." "But the money," my father started, "is no longer your concern," I finished, gently closing the door in their faces. The next morning they came back, with reinforcements. Aunt Patty, my mother's sister and the self-appointed family peacemaker, knocked and called through the door. "Natasha, honey, please be reasonable. Your parents are struggling without your help. They managed their finances before I ever sent a dime," I called back through the closed door. "They chose early retirement knowing they couldn't afford it. We made those decisions because you promised to help." My mother's voice broke in, raw and emotional. "We had to cancel our cruise. Now we might lose the house." Their tactics, the guilt trips, the manipulation were so obvious now. When had I ever promised them lifetime support? I had simply offered temporary help. And somehow that had become an unspoken lifetime contract in their minds. "Mom. Dad," I said firmly. "I'm recovering from major surgery. I'm raising 2 toddlers alone. This conversation is over." I walked away from the door, ignoring their continued knocking, their pleading. Later that afternoon, a group email popped into my inbox. From my father. Sent to the entire extended family. It accused me of abandoning them after all their sacrifices, painting me as an ungrateful daughter who had heartlessly cut them off. Conveniently, it left out the part where they refused to help during my emergency surgery. What they didn't anticipate was what happened next. The backlash came quickly. My cousin Michael, who lived near my parents, was the first to reply to the family group email. "Uncle Robert, didn't you just buy a new boat last month? And Aunt Diana, wasn't that a new diamond tennis bracelet you were showing off at Thanksgiving?" Other relatives began chiming in, many of them privately messaging me, asking for the real story. Even Aunt Patty, who had initially tried to mediate, called me directly. "I had no idea about your surgery," she confessed. "They told me you were just being dramatic about a routine procedure and using it to punish them financially." Meanwhile, Jessica had firmly taken my side after witnessing our parents' behavior firsthand. Together, we crafted a simple, factual response to the family email thread. I recently underwent emergency surgery with significant risk of complications. My parents refused to watch my children during this time because they had concert tickets. I am now focusing on my recovery and caring for my twins without additional stress. The support that followed was overwhelming. Michael's wife dropped off home-cooked meals. A second cousin I barely knew offered to babysit part-time, free of charge. Jessica started spending weekends at my apartment, bonding with Ethan and Emily while helping me recuperate. Most surprisingly, Valerie, whom I had met in the hospital, connected me with a support group for young widowed parents. Our first meeting was held via Zoom, and for the first time since James's death, I felt truly understood by people who had walked a similar path. Meanwhile, my parents' financial situation deteriorated rapidly. Jessica, after helping them review their finances, discovered the truth. They took out a second mortgage last year to buy that boat, assuming you just keep paying their bills, she said, shaking her head. They're not broke, Natasha. They're just overspent. If they sold the boat and the timeshare, they'd be fine. Their increasingly desperate voicemails and texts continued, but with each passing day, their hold on me weakened. I was building something new from the ashes of their betrayal, a real support system, grounded in mutual care rather than obligation. 1 month after my surgery, a new twist arrived. Jessica called, concern and exasperation clear in her voice. They got a foreclosure notice, she said. The bank's giving them 60 days to catch up or they lose the house. What about their retirement funds? I asked, bouncing Emily on my hip as Ethan napped. Mostly gone, Jessica admitted. They spent a chunk on the boat and lost the rest in some shady investment one of Dad's golf buddies pitched to them. Later that evening, I received desperate texts from both parents, now stripped of all pretense. We never thought you'd actually cut us off, my mother wrote. We figured you'd start sending money again after a week or two. Their assumption that my boundaries weren't real infuriated me. All those years of putting their needs ahead of mine, they had never respected me. Meanwhile, my life was transforming in ways I hadn't expected. The support group became a lifeline, connecting me with others who truly understood. Through it, I met Diana, a real estate agent and fellow widow, who helped me see new possibilities. Selling my too small apartment, moving somewhere more affordable, finding better childcare. I also started a small side business designing memorial websites, inspired by the one I had created for James. Members of the support group began commissioning me for their own projects, and slowly word spread. For the first time since becoming a widow, I felt a sense of purpose beyond mere survival. The contrast between my growth and my parents' collapse became stark when they showed up unannounced at my apartment, this time armed with a detailed spreadsheet of their debts. We need $144,000 to catch up on the mortgage and avoid foreclosure, my father said. His voice edged with desperation. I invited them in, not out of obligation but out of curiosity. What about selling the boat? I asked, gesturing toward the table. We'd take a loss, my father protested. And the timeshare. The market's terrible, my mother added quickly. Besides, those are our retirement luxuries. I almost laughed. Luxuries you can't afford, I said. We could with your help, my father shot back, his voice hardening. It's the least you could do after everything we've done for you. I leaned back in my chair. What exactly have you done for me? I asked quietly, letting the question hang. Just then, the twins toddled into the room, Ethan clutching his toy truck and Emily babbling happily. My parents' faces softened immediately. There are our precious babies, my mother crooned, reaching for Emily, who promptly hid behind my legs. They don't know you, I said simply. You've seen them 3 times? You chose not to be involved. That's not fair, my father protested. We're busy people. Too busy for your only grandchildren. Too busy to help your daughter during emergency surgery, but not too busy to ask for money. I think that says everything, I said. My mother's face crumpled, though I couldn't tell if it was real emotion or more manipulation. "Without your help, we'll lose everything," she whispered. "I lost my husband," I replied steady. "My children lost their father. We survived. You will too." 3 months after my surgery, reality caught up with them. They were forced to sell their house to avoid foreclosure. Jessica kept me updated on our parents' situation, though I maintained my distance. They had managed to find a modest condo, a significant downsizing from their sprawling 4,000-square-foot lakefront property. My father had reluctantly sold his beloved boat at a loss, and they finally unloaded the timeshare, for a fraction of what they had paid. "They're actually blaming you for their financial problems," Jessica told me during one of her weekly visits. "It's bizarre. They tell anyone who'll listen that you abandoned them after promising lifelong support." "Let them talk," I replied, feeling surprisingly unbothered. "The truth speaks for itself." And it did. My extended family, once divided, had largely rallied around me after learning the full story. Even my father's sister, who had always defended him in family disputes, called to express her support after hearing about their refusal to help during my surgery. Meanwhile, my own life had changed in ways I could never have imagined. With Diana's help from the support group, I bought a small 3-bedroom house in a family-friendly neighborhood. My mortgage payments were actually lower than my old apartment rent, and for the first time, Ethan and Emily had a backyard to play in. My side business, designing memorial websites, had grown steadily. I was able to scale back on my general graphic design work and focus on projects that felt meaningful. Olivia still helped with childcare 3 days a week, but I had adjusted my schedule to prioritize time with the twins. Most importantly, I had found a community. Neighbors brought casseroles when we moved in. The support group organized playdates. Jessica had become a true sister to me, no longer a competitor for our parents' affection. Even Valerie from the hospital stopped by occasionally with her children. I had lost my husband and cut ties with my parents, yet somehow I felt less alone than ever before. 6 months after my surgery, I received a letter, a real handwritten letter, from my mother. I almost threw it away, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside was something I had never seen before. A genuine apology. "I've had time to reflect on my behavior," she wrote. "Watching you build a life without our help forced me to confront some painful truths about myself as a mother. I was jealous of your independence, your resilience. I resented that you didn't seem to need me the way I needed my own mother. But now I see you did need me. Just not in the ways I wanted to be needed. When you asked us to care for the twins during your surgery, you were reaching out and we failed you completely. I am deeply sorry." She went on to explain that they had completely restructured their finances. My father had taken a part-time job at a local hardware store. They had sold most of their luxury possessions, and for the first time in decades, they were living modestly. She didn't ask for forgiveness or money, only for acknowledgement. I showed the letter to Jessica, who remained cautious. "They've been talking about writing for weeks," she said. "Dad was against it at first. But after his heart scare last month, he's different." "Heart scare?" I asked, concern creeping in despite myself. "Just high blood pressure and chest pains," Jessica reassured me. "But it scared him enough to get serious. He's on medication now, actually following the doctor's orders." I wasn't ready to respond right away. I needed time to process. Was this genuine remorse, or simply a new strategy? Were they truly changing or just adapting their tactics? That night, I looked through old family photos for the first time since cutting ties. Behind the smiling faces, I saw patterns I had once been blind to. The way they had always performed the role of perfect parents, while consistently putting their own needs first. A year after my surgery, I finally agreed to meet them at a neutral location, a quiet cafe near my new home. When they arrived, I barely recognized them. My father, once towering and commanding, seemed smaller, humbled. My mother's designer outfits had been replaced with simple, practical clothes. The twins were with Jessica for the afternoon. I wasn't ready for a full family reunion just yet. We sat in awkward silence until my father did something I had never seen before. He cried. "I've been a terrible father," he said, his voice breaking, "and an even worse grandfather. I don't expect your forgiveness, but I want you to know, see it now, how selfish we've been." My mother reached across the table, not quite touching my hand but gesturing toward it. "We've spent months in family therapy," she explained. "It was Jessica's idea. We resisted at first. But it's been transformative. I didn't rush to forgive them. I didn't make promises I couldn't keep. Instead, I shared pictures of Ethan and Emily, told them about our new life. They listened, truly listened, without interrupting or making it about themselves. Perhaps for the first time ever. As we parted, my father asked quietly, "Would it be possible, someday, to know our grandchildren?" I considered carefully before answering. "That depends on your actions, not your words. If you're truly committed to change, we can start with short, supervised visits. But understand, my children will only have relationships with people who respect their mother." Walking away from that cafe, I didn't feel the crushing weight of obligation, or the burning resentment that had once defined my relationship with them. I felt something new. The calm assurance of a woman who knew her worth, who had built her own life, and who would protect it fiercely. Whether my parents could truly change remained to be seen. But I already had. I was no longer a daughter desperate for approval. I was a mother, strong, clear, and unafraid to defend the world I had created for myself and my children.